Yeah, right.
Hey, take it easy, man. You ready to play a game?
Yeah, right. So you want your money, right? You're hustling, man. You come in here hustling. Get paid for this, motherfucker. You get paid for this.
When a police officer arrives at the scene of a crime, such as in this case a stabbing, it's important to determine what exactly has happened. But before doing that, we need to make sure that the area is safe and secure. Secondly, if there have been any type of injuries to any of the people in the area, we need to make sure that we call the appropriate medical assistance.
3S90 dispatch. I need an ambulance in the basement.
Only then would we take the opportunity and the time to begin interviewing people to determine the facts of the situation.
Back up, everybody back up. Anybody see what happened here?
Yeah, I saw Joe and Vinny.
Let's go over here and talk. Come here.
Who else saw what happened?
I seen it. Vinny was pissed and he started
Step over
falling.
here. Why don't you just have a seat right here?
The officers should attempt to separate witnesses before questioning them, because if we don't, inevitably they'll hear each other's stories and give us virtually the same information. What we want to do is question them separately and apart from each other, so we get directly from the witness what they actually saw, heard, or observed without any contamination from someone else's viewpoint.
Come over here and just have a seat right here. Okay. Now, tell me what happened. What'd you see?
Yeah, well, I was going out to my car to get some more cigs, and this guy pushes me, and he starts heading for the stairs. He was freaked out, man. Anyways, I shove him, and I tell him to watch where the hell he's going, but he didn't even see me. I mean, I don't know what he was talking about. It probably has something to do with that wad of green he dropped at the pool table.
Tell me what happened here.
Well, you know, Joe, the guy that got hurt downstairs, he comes in here all the time and shoots pool, you know, and he's a real jerk. I mean, he's always trying to hustle somebody, trying to find an easy mark, you know. So, anyway, he gets into a game with this other guy, and the next thing I know, the other guy starts yelling at him that he was gonna get even or something. I don't know, I just never thought anything like this was gonna happen, though, you know?
The interviewing process, whether we deal with victims, suspects, or witnesses, is where we gather information and establish facts. It's the core of good police work. A good, effective interview can save us hundreds of man-hours and can focus us on the central issues of the investigation. When we talk about interviewing and interrogation, we need to identify that these are two separate and distinct procedures. And it's absolutely essential that every law enforcement officer understand the differences between these procedures. When conducting an investigative interview, the officer is asking questions to develop factual information. Who, what, where, when, how type of questions. Interrogation, however, is a process that is specifically designed to develop an admission of guilt. As such, it is reserved for those instances when a person's guilt has been reasonably established from the investigative information. In a larger department, the officer may take the initial report in a case and turn it over to someone else who will conduct the actual investigation, any follow-up interviews, and even the interrogation if it becomes necessary. In smaller agencies, an officer may take the case all the way, conducting all interviews, following all investigative leads, and conducting the interrogation. Whether we're interviewing someone or interrogating someone, developing rapport and cooperation is absolutely essential. And as a result, we've got to look for ways to enhance cooperation. Let's take a look at a scenario in which the officers show you exactly what not to do in terms of developing cooperation.
Who's there?
Police, open the door. We want to talk to you.
What do you want?
I want to talk to you about the stabbing at Blondie's bar last night.
I don't know nothing about no stabbing at Blondie's last night.
Hey, listen, we know you were there with Joe Bianchi. Come on out and talk about the stabbing.
Hey, I told you I don't know nothing about no stabbing at Joe Beyond, whatever.
Look, we know you were involved in the stabbing. You can talk to us now or you can talk to us later.
Hey, listen, you'll have to arrest me first, you pricks.
In the previous example, the two officers immediately put the suspect on the defensive. They were accusatory without giving the subject any opportunity to tell his version of what happened the previous night in the bar. One of the disadvantages to such an early attempt to get an admission of guilt or such an accusatory tone of voice during the first contact with the suspect is that it takes away any future opportunity to question the person. Based on that first experience, they may refuse to talk to any officer again regarding this case. And if they do talk to us, we may have decreased the chance of getting a confession. So barring unusual circumstances, we recommend that you stay away from accusatory interrogation until all the pieces of the investigation are in place. Now, there are some exceptions. When you're dealing with investigations where someone's life is in the balance, a kidnapping perhaps, bomb threats, maybe a case where an accomplice is out there with a weapon and threatening an individual, we may want to interrogate a suspect on the scene right away to find out what's going on. Maybe in some case, where you arrive on the scene of a crime, you have a subject who is emotionally traumatized, they haven't had the chance to develop an alibi, they obviously seem shaky, almost defeated. Maybe then we'd want to interrogate that person because we've got a chance of getting the confession. But as a general rule, we want to interview people first, develop information, and then interrogate when appropriate. With that in mind, let's take a look at the proper way to conduct an interview.
Who is it?
It's the police. We'd like to talk to you for a minute.
Yeah?
Hi. Can we step inside and talk to you for a minute?
Yeah, sure, I guess.
Hi, I'm Officer Warder. This is Sergeant Miller. Hi. We'd like to ask you a couple of questions if we can.
Sure, go ahead.
Where were you last night between 10 and midnight?
Stopped at Blondie's for a beer.
Did you do anything down there last night? Talk to anybody? Shoot some pool?
Yeah, I shot a couple games of pool, had a few beers, and came home. What's the big deal?
Well, there was a problem down there last night we're following up on. Who'd you shoot pool with last night?
I don't know. I think the guy's name was Joe or something.
Did you win?
Guy was a hustler. He took me for a few bucks. It's no big deal.
This situation is much different than the first, in which the officers were very accusatory and as a result put the subject on the defensive right away. In this case, the officers were very congenial in their tone of voice, their general approach was non-threatening, and they tried to do everything they could to develop cooperation with the subject. And cooperation is a key element in any investigation. Another important aspect of the psychology of interviewing is that we want to try to talk to people in an environment that is free from distractions, outside noises, or interruptions. Let's take a look at how a subject responds to questioning in two different environments.
Excuse me, are you Tom Foster?
Yeah.
Could you step out here so I can talk to you for a second? Could you tell me where you were at last Saturday night?
I took my sister over to a friend's house, and then I went to a party.
But what time did you leave the party?
It was late. I don't know exactly what time it was.
Did you go directly home after you left the party?
Yeah, I did.
Well, Tom, you'll be able to appreciate that we talked to other people who saw you leave the party after drinking quite heavily. If you were involved in a hit-and-run accident that evening, our investigation would clearly show that. So tell me, Tom, were you involved in the accident?
Well, I hadn't had that much to drink, really.
One of the reasons many officers have some difficulty in detecting deception during the interview is that they're questioning the person in a public environment. When a subject is being bombarded by extraneous stimuli, it dilutes the behavior displayed during the interview. Let's take a look at what it looks like when we can eliminate those extraneous stimuli.
Tom, can you tell me where you were last Saturday night?
I took my sister to a friend's house, and I just went to some party. You know, it wasn't a big deal or anything.
What time did you leave the party?
It was late. I don't really remember what time it was.
Did you go directly home after you left the party?
Yeah, I did.
Well, Tom, you have to appreciate that we talked to other people who saw you leave the party after drinking quite heavily. If you were involved in a hit-and-run accident that evening, our investigation would clearly show that. So tell me, Tom, were you involved in an accident?
No, I didn't have that much to drink that night.
Placed in a more controlled environment away from the shop, the interviewer was able to establish a much better rapport and develop much more information from the subject. He wasn't distracted by the extraneous events going on around him. Anytime that we're out in the field, we want to try to control the environment as much as possible. If we're talking to somebody on the street and there's a lot of activity around, we might want to walk the person over to a more isolated, private environment. If we go to someone's home to interview them there or to question them there, and there are kids around, maybe the television is on, we might want to try to walk the person into another room that is free of those elements so they're not distracted by them. The ideal place for an interview in most cases is going to be the police station interview room. It has many advantages. Not only is it private, but you are in psychological control of the environment, and there are going to be very few distractions interrupting the flow of conversation. A third element that I want to talk about with respect to the psychology of interviewing deals with question phraseology. When we're interviewing somebody, it's important as a general rule that our questions don't suggest the answer we want back. Who did you leave the bar with does not suggest an answer, whereas did you leave the bar with Joe clearly does. Where did you go after you left the bar is an open-ended question, whereas after you left the bar, did you go over to Frank's is not. When seeking information, the officer should ask open-ended questions that do not suggest the answer. On the other hand, when you have already developed information and are looking for confirmation, or you're trying to convey to the suspect the extent of your knowledge, you may choose to use a more assumptive question phraseology. How long were you playing pool with Joe? As opposed to, did you play pool with Joe? When you followed Joe downstairs, were you alone? As opposed to, did you follow Joe downstairs? Question phraseology is one of the most important characteristics of the interview process. But in this module, we have seen several different characteristics and essential elements that interviews should contain. I'd like to summarize those for you. First of all, the interview process is non-accusatory. It is typically conducted in a question and answer format in a conversational dialogue approach. We are asking questions of a non-accusatory nature in which we're trying to develop factual information. The success of the interview depends on the investigator's ability to develop rapport and cooperation with the person being questioned. When seeking information, each question should be phrased in a manner that does not suggest the answer. When interviewing several witnesses or suspects, separate them from one another to eliminate the possibility that they will give us the same identical information. When you are interviewing, it is important to make sure that your environment is as free as possible from any noises or outside distractions. An integral part of the interview process is the investigator's ability to read and evaluate the verbal and nonverbal behavior that is displayed by the subject, particularly in trying to determine if this person is answering truthfully or withholding relevant information. In the next couple of programs, we're going to describe the verbal and nonverbal behavior guidelines that you can use to help you determine who's telling you the truth and who's lying. And at the same time, we're going to discuss the techniques involved in conducting the Reed Behavioral Analysis interview.